China is printing 1 trillion yuan and is doing this in order to support its housing market. This is something that should ring a bell to the US and other countries, whereby they printed money, they supported the system, they used all sorts of incentives in order to prop up the housing market and only formed a major bubble when it should have crashed. Now we see China doing the same thing. People's Bank of China wades into fiscal waters as China boosts stimulus. Now they printed a bunch of money, and 300 billion yuan of that was scheduled for low-income housing. This is very interesting because it seems like they're setting up their own type of Fannie Mae, which of course is ultimately not a great idea, especially to funnel a large amount of money into, because we saw what happened there. The government eventually had to take it over. The key issue is excessive capacity and over-leverage. When you combine these two factors, it makes defaults almost inevitable, and that's what happens. But however, I would like to interject here and say that it is not necessarily that they will default in the traditional sense. They may default using cheaper dollars, and if you hyperinflate a currency, you can pay back on your debts, but of course it's almost a form of default because you're paying back in confetti. And here we are, China's debt to GDP ratio breaks 250%, and they are not alone on this. The US had 260%, the UK 277%, Japan leading the world at 415%. Now, how they use these calculations and so on, I'm not sure. However, these numbers are very conservative by many estimates. So let's go on quickly. So this is basically the property market saying that it is too big to fail, and it is 16% of their GDP in China. This is huge because they absolutely need to support this housing market, and they're doing that right now by printing 1 trillion yuan, just a small measure when you really think about how much money is being printed out there. And look at what they're going to do. They're going to relax the purchase restrictions, and they're going to lower the down payment requirements and make it easier for local access to bank mortgages locally. So basically, they're doing exactly what they did in the housing boom in the US. They're following in their footsteps, and it seems like they're going to head in the same direction. You can't just build entire cities and have it be the most giant public works project that's ever been known to man and nothing bad's going to happen. That's not how this works. Ultimately, you have to face the consequences. Now, I will say that, of course, China in the future does seem to be something very, very huge. They obviously have been gaining steam over the past couple decades and are poised to do well. However, they are not going to be without their downturns. Let's be honest about that. Jim Rogers, who is extremely bullish on China, and of course that's his book, and he basically said that we're going to have downturns in China. There are going to be problems. But of course, down in the future, they may own this world and the economy may be booming and all sorts of things like this. I must also say that, yes, China is still growing, but they're slowing down significantly. And that's something that you need to watch for, because remember, with this globalized world, a problem in one other country directly affects the other. So let's go on very quickly, running out of time. Previously, the People's Bank of China had to play with the reserve requirement ratio. Okay, you guys have to hold on to $1 for every 10 you loan out. But you know what? Let's stop playing that game. Now we're going to introduce this thing called PSL, and then they're not going to have to use that anymore. And we can just increase the money supply. And that's all. It's just a new tool. It's backed by collateral, we promise, and have no fear, so on and so forth. You've heard this all before, and they're being very, very ridiculous about this because you're just creating another QE scheme. You're covering it up by calling it PSL, and it's just nothing but a monetary easing, quantitative easing, fiscal stimulus, monetary stimulus, whatever you want to call it. It's more money being created, taken away from the middle class and pushed somewhere else. That's how I bring this down. That's what the Money GPS is all about. It's about taking all these complex subjects, taking all this complex words and jargon that they use and simplifying it down. You are part of the middle class. You're more poor because of this scheme. That's the end of it. I wrote about this in my book. Here's the diagram. I've shown it before a couple times, I believe. And basically, this is a CDO, collateralized debt obligation. This is the kind of scheme that they're pulling up right now in China. You have, and this is just an example, car loans, mortgages, credit card debt. You take them all the garbage ones that you know never going to be paid back, and they took it all, they put it into this little package, put a nice little bow on it, called it a CDO, and rated it a AAA investment. And then companies, hedge funds, and all sorts of institutions were buying it up like it was hotcakes, just loving it up, because of course it's a AAA investment rated the very highest, even though it was the worst garbage, saying that because it was completely diversified, it couldn't all possibly collapse at once. But that's the problem here. That's what we're facing. That's what China is going to have to face. And here it is, the central bank in China printing 1 trillion yuan to China's development bank for re-lending to the reconstruction of shanty towns. What an excellent investment they've made there. And they're saying that they already spent 1 trillion yuan this year, and that is directly from their own government there. So they're trying to build millions and millions of homes, redevelop them, and this is nothing but a major, giant public works project in order to support the economy. Whether it will be successful or a failure is to be seen, but I see this as being another parallel to what happened in the US with the housing boom. As they relax more and more on the restrictions, you have the boom and the bubbles forming. This concerns me very much. Now, if you like this information, you need to be an insider. It's totally free. It's just good quality information that I send out through emails, and they are very short, very concise, and spread apart every few days. I send them out. And that is at themoneygps.com. At the bottom, you fill in your email address and you get those emails from me, and I hope that you'll join me there.